Why do you open your shoulders? Well, I believe it's a couple things that cause you to open your shoulders. One, traditional theory has taught you that if you open your shoulders and you rotate your body, that that's somehow going to create power. And I can understand why you would think that. But in reality, have you ever really created magnificent power? You know, I mean, let's just get real with it. When it comes down to it, rotating your shoulders requires a great amount of athleticism and timing, and it's also asking you to rotate your shoulders around your spine. Your spine doesn't twist, so you're doing something anatomically improper, which actually hurts the body. But let's go further than that. Something that's something that I think is always overlooked in traditional theory and traditional instruction. The anatomy works very specifically. You have a right side, you have a left side, you know. The upper part of our body curls and the lower part of our body also curls, but on opposite sides. There's all kinds of different musculature going on, and there's just the reality of how our joints operate. So, our shoulder joints are 3/4 rotating shoulder joints, meaning that they can do this, but they can't do this. Right? When you reach your arm back here, it's where you start to reach the quarter of the joint that does not allow you to do that. And that's why you can then hyperextend certain parts of your anatomy based upon not using them properly, right? So, given that, these 3/4 rotating shoulder joints work very specifically. Notice, your right side works this way. It folds into itself, and your left side does the same. It folds into itself. But they do it in an opposite manner. Now, relative to golf, this is an outside-in swing path. This is an inside-out swing path. So your left side and your left side alone already wants to make an inside-out swing. But you're probably right-handed because you play these clubs, which should be called left-handed clubs, but they're called right-handed clubs. So you pick it up, you put it in your right hand's your dominant hand, you try and swing it. Well, as soon as you try and swing it, your right shoulder goes, oh, okay, I'll come over the top because you asked me to do something. That's just how the right side works. So as you start communicating to your right side, you're immediately communicating to the nemesis of a good swing. Now, if you can communicate to your left side and you have the athleticism to be able to do so, you're immediately going to also have that benefit, and that's why a lot of good players happen to be left-handed people playing right-handed golf clubs, right? The glove goes on your left hand. You know, it goes on your lead hand. This is all about creating a dominant lead side. But then when you start talking to your dominant side naturally in life, you start telling it to do things, even though they're well-intended. You tell your right arm to drop and do all those proper things. But it doesn't know how to do that. It knows how to do this. And as soon as you talk to it, it not only wants to come over the top, but it wants to open your shoulders. This is because also our anatomy works very specifically. If I'm going to shoot a basketball, my right shoulder comes forward, my left shoulder goes back, and my right shoulder is the dominant arm. If I tried to shoot with both shoulders level, I'd have to shoot a set shot like back in the 40s. So there's an anatomical reality that occurs that when you start talking to this, even though it may be well-intended, it then says, oh, okay, I'll do what I know how to do, not what you're going to ask me to do, and your shoulders open, and your right hand hits, and you come over the top. It's simply anatomical. Now, how can you resolve that? Do you have to somehow become left-hand dominant? Do you have to, learn how to have this great dexterity in your left arm and left side? No. You simply have to set the position of your body so that your right side will be supportive. So remember when I referenced shooting a basketball, right? Well, this lead shoulder comes forward. Throwing a punch. You don't throw punches back here, right? You throw punches where this lead shoulder is forward. And if my left arm wants to throw a punch, the left shoulder has to come forward of the right before it can deliver any kind of forceful strike, right? This is just anatomical. So what can we do then to make the right side submit? You put it here. That's the whole purpose of the setup position that I teach. It gives you the opportunity, the person, but I don't need to start from such a closed setup position. I already know how to use my left side. I've used it very effectively all my life. So it's It's the way of helping you to pacify your right side is to draw your right side back in the setup position and draw it back there and leave it back there, because it has no way that it can start to influence the swing negatively. So then what happens is you start to realize that this position is solid and powerful, and your right side sensations start to disappear. It starts to realize that it's just supportive, and it starts to submit to your left side. So since it's an anatomical issue, you can fix it anatomically. This isn't mental. You don't have to convince yourself to make your right side stop, because it won't happen. You've tried that all your life. In the traditional swing even, they'll tell you not too much right side, right? So given that, why not just try to get closed and see what happens? See what happens when you're forced to make a left-sided swing, which is what my setup position does. It forces you to make a lead-sided swing, which means, and I'll tell you this, for those that also like to comment that no pro on tour is doing this, every great ball striker uses their lead side in a dominant way. It's also why they're bad putters. Every poor ball striker uses their trail side in a dominant way, and that's why they're good putters. And that's where they meet in the middle. You have the good ball strikers and you have the good putters. Nicklaus was the only one to be on both sides of the ball, and if you watch my other videos, you see the explanation as to why. He does it anatomically. He's in his left to strike, he's in his right to putt. So for you, take advantage of this anatomical opportunity to recognize how your body works, something that the traditional swing constantly ignores, and it's why the traditional swing hurts. It's why the traditional swing is not consistent, because it ignores the anatomy. You see, I operate from form follows function, right? I want the function of a tight draw, so I'm going to assume this form. The traditional swing operates on function forces form. They're forcing you to get into these weird striking positions that they think the anatomy wants to do and can do. But it doesn't do that. All this stuff, that's not what the anatomy wants to do, and that's why it requires so much timing, and that's why the best players in the world get hurt from doing too many movements that go against what the natural anatomy wants to be. So, back to my point. Jump into your left side. Jump into your lead side. And when I say jump into it, look what I've done here. You could draw your whole right side back. And what you're doing there, you're not aiming out to the right. That has nothing to do with it. See, the swing path is still going to be here. You're trying to just be able to create this swing path without having this side foul the swing and come over the top with its misperception and misuse of the anatomy, right? So instead, jump into your left side, jump into your lead side, where you're really deeply set here, and just see what happens. Very quickly, your right side or your trail side is going to start to pacify. It'll start to support. It'll start to remove itself from the swing. It'll start to then reduce its effort upon the ball. That'll reduce how hard you strike at the ball, which I think it's very poor to strike hard at the ball. And also, it'll improve your swing path. And so you start to create power, and you start to create efficiency and all that, simply by recognizing that your anatomy works in a very specific way, and many golfers have an issue with their trail side wanting to strike, and that causes them then to come over the top. You know who you are, right? So take the opportunity to jump into your left side, and then once you're there, just keep your weight still and see what happens. You're going to be forced to make a left-sided swing. And once you're forced to make a left-sided swing, or a lead-sided swing, you can't help but be a good ball striker. And since you simply have to keep your weight still, you can be a good ball striker that is consistent. So, finally, I'll do it for you. Sorry. I talk a lot. I got something to say. So I'm deep into my left here. Now I'm just going to hold my weight still and see what happens. Forced to make a left-sided swing. Take that opportunity for yourself.